All right, guys. So welcome everyone for this lovely Saturday afternoon. My name is Satish Sabapati. Um, I have been in QA space for about more than 10, 11 years now. Um, Worked as a tester, automation tester, test lead, test manager, and all that stuff. So today, I'm going to talk about give an overview of Codecept JS, which is a UI automation tool based on JavaScript. And also, as a second part, we can talk about the report portal as well. Um, any particular reason why we chose this topic? I have no idea. I think someone was asking question, and then yeah, I said I have experience, so thought I'll give a overview of it. So if people are interested, they could also start using it. Okay, so let me give a background of why Codecept JS, and why we've actually in our organization why we started to use it. So so previously in my company we were using Serenity framework. A lot of you must already have very good experience with Serenity. It is a Selenium based Java framework. Um, it's built on Selenium, but it's got a lot of useful libraries. Um, you know, a lot of things, especially like BDD, Cucumber. A lot of these things are integrated. Reports are integrated, so it's you can get up to speed really easily. So we started using it. We've had a very good run with it. Um, but there was a time we you know we didn't I mean our team is quite big. We have a lot of developers and some testers. We were running it pipeline, but we were not seeing very good benefits in terms of the number of tests written and number of adoption in terms of the whole organization, especially with developers. um, so what I mean by that is, the developers would keep on developing their stuff. They would not even look at the tests. It's almost seen as it's testers' job to write automated tests, and if there are any bugs, they'll raise it, and that's it. So we wanted to change this culture. We wanted the automation testing also to be part of the development. So we should write the tests in parallel to the development, and the developers should make use of those tests that's written. When they build it locally, they run these tests to get the feedback. Um, and also have a good communication with the developers. So one of the things that we've asked the developers, okay, why don't you use the automated test that we have in Serenity? And most of the developers we have are from JavaScript background, because UI is built on JavaScript, and even the backend is also built in JavaScript in our place. So then they said, oh, I don't have experience in Java, and I don't know anything about automation testing, and your Selenium and these things, it takes a lot of time to set up. And they've given these reasons, which are all valid indeed. So then I did a bit of research, and looked at different tools. If there are anything in JavaScript which can work both for developers as well as testers. So based on the research, I've identified this Codecept JS and Cypress. They were doing a really good job, and it might fill the bill. So that's why we started doing some POCs on these things. And so some of the criteria that we put in place to evaluate these two things is that the UI applications are JavaScript based, so tests should also be in the same language. UI tests should reside along the UI application code. So if you see, traditionally the application code will have its own repo, and the testers will write their tests in a different repo. And both of them were quite isolated, and it was not consolidated effort. So we thought, why not the test also reside in the same application code? If the if the developers want to run the tests locally, they should be able to run it. If they want to run the tests in the pipeline, like in a CI pipeline, that should do. And if we want to run the test on its own, like a test cycle, it should do. So that's why we said, okay, the test will also exist along with the UI application code. Like you have the unit tests, even the integration tests should also lie along with the code. So dev should make use of these tests. Dev should contribute to the test. It should not just be the tester's job to write it. So if necessary, if some of the tests are breaking, even the devs should be able to help, because traditionally, if you see, there'll be a lot of developers, and testers will be only like one or two within the team. So it may not be um, there may not be enough time for people to write and manage the tests. And most importantly, whatever the framework that we choose, it should be very easy for everyone to get up and running with minimal steps. So running the Selenium server, or Docker or anything, like there should not be any extra steps. It should be quite easy to do it. So based on all these criteria, as I said, we've looked at Cypress and Codecept. So Cypress is pretty impressive as well. But we did not choose Cypress for few reasons, such as at that time, Cypress would only work on Chrome, and it does not support other browsers. And also, there were some integration issues with our IDM solution. Like some sites will use things like Okta or Google site for authentication, like a third-party tool to authenticate, to log in. So Cypress at that time was not supporting one of the authentication tools that the third-party tool that we were using, it was not supporting. So for those reasons, we started to jump into Codecept. So the Codecept.io is the website. The main features is it's similar to Serenity and Selenium BDD framework. So if you have used Cucumber, Serenity, Selenium, anything like that before, it should be pretty easy to use it as well. Easy to build and maintain. It's very flexible. It can do a lot of stuff. I'll show you. And it has multiple driver support. I'll explain you what I mean by the driver support. Okay. Do you see my browser window, guys?
No, we can't, Satish.
Okay. Good. Okay, do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, Codecept JS. Yeah. Okay. Um, so before I go into the concepts of Codecept JS, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, fine. Yeah. So good thing about Codecept JS is, although it is JavaScript based, you don't necessarily need to know JavaScript very well. Like for when you do with Selenium, Java, or Serenity, you don't need to know Java in depth. Basic concepts would suffice. Similarly, for the Codecept JS as well, you don't need to be an expert in JavaScript. If you know basic concepts of JavaScript, such as your text and comparison and assertions, That should be sufficient. And another cool thing about this thing is, it's very user friendly. So, for example, if you want to write your test, it would look something like this. I am on page. I click. I fill field. I click. I see. So, if you were to do the same in your Selenium, then you would use like WebDriver dot, you know, um, you be on the page or click, that kind of a thing. So a lot of these things are custom built, and it's like there are a lot of these commands that you can use very easily, so you can get straight to the point of implementing your code, like your website, your username, password, whatever. And then your validations as well. It's very easy. If you go to the site, you can see a nice video of explaining in detail. And the website is also very good. They have a lot of support and demos as well. You can use that. Some of the quick features are like scenario driven, so you can write your acceptance test straight away, and it supports your BDD and Cucumber, all these things. And it's got very rich locator support. Like you could use different type of locators, CSS, export, and all the different information you can find out what other options are there. And you could use page objects. You get beautiful reports inbuilt with it. I'll show you the demo. And there is something called interactive debug. So for example, when you are, okay, someone wants me to let me in a second. Okay. Um, yeah. So when you are working in Selenium or Java, basically you have to do at a stretch. Like if you want to like debug or do something, then you'll have to stop the test, add the new thing, and then restart it again. Whereas there is this interactive option that while your test is running, it'll give you an interactive option where you can enter the steps, and then it'll run straight away. So you don't need to stop and start and do all those things. Um, so your a real world example will look something like this. So you have your feature and you have your scenario. I'm assuming you all know the BDD concept. So you describe what your feature is about, and what your scenario is about, and then you get to the point. And you don't see any code kind of thing, except your definitions, like your constants or variables. Otherwise, it's like you're writing your simple statements. So basically, you have this login method called the customer, and then you say, okay, I do this, and I don't see. I click, and I feel, I retry. It's very simple and straightforward. A lot of companies use it, and um, there are a lot of different helpers as well available. So if you remember in Selenium and Java, basically you will have to like install your drivers like Firefox or Chrome, and you have to maintain it in the background. Here, for Codecept JS, they have given a lot of these support, like WebDriver, your traditional WebDriver, Puppeteer. Puppeteer is a flavor of Chrome, but it's very fast and it's headless, so your tests will run really fast. And there are a lot of other options like Protractor, Test Cafe, and Nightmare. The beauty of these things is the configuration is very simple. You just mention it in one line, and then it will start using it. So let me quickly show you a simple exercise so that you'll understand it even better.
Maximize your screen size. Hopefully, it should be a bit bigger.
Yeah, it's fine, I think.
Good enough? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So so this was the test we talked about earlier, right? So forms underscore test. In the configuration file, we need to say where our tests reside. Okay, so basically you're saying, okay, within the folder, anything that has underscore test will be the test. So you can add as many tests as you want, but the format is that you should have it underscore test at the end. There is no compulsion that you have to use it. If you decide to use some other kind of format, let's say test underscore something, then you just need to change the pattern here. Okay. Um, and as I said, timeout is how long you're asking the WebDriver or the driver to wait for a particular session um, to check. And then in the helpers section, you can use different helpers. I'll come to that in a bit. And then any dependencies that you have, you can mention it there. So it's very simple. You have your test file, and then you have your configuration file, and then there is this output file. I'll come on to that in a bit. So let's quickly run the test. How do I run it is basically you need to install Codecept JS. So the steps are you will need to run npm install Codecept JS and any driver. So if you go with Puppeteer, by default, it will be much more easier. So you could specify that. So if you do this, then all the Codecept JS and the dependencies will be downloaded. And then if you don't have anything, so for example, in this case, I've already have the project, but if you don't have anything, then you can do npx init, and that will initiate um, the project for you, and and then you can choose the driver whichever you want. Do you want the driver, Puppeteer, or anything? And then you can start creating your test. So it's very interactive. So if you don't have anything and you're starting from the beginning, then it's very helpful that you can create it straight away. Okay. So once it's all done, your project will look something like this. Okay, the one that you see here. Right. So how can I run the test is assuming all of those dependencies are installed. Then you say npx Codecept.js run, and that will run the test. So let's run it. So basically, it opened the website, and it did it, right? So the same thing. If I don't want the browser to open, and I just want to run it in a headless mode, all I have to do is just set it to false, and rerun the test. Yeah. You can see it's much more quicker than before. It's exactly the same error as you were getting, because it was, I think on that page, this active is does not exist, and that's why it's failing. So these things below have failed, and everything above has worked fine, right? So you can see it's when you have like hundreds of tests, and when you run it in headless mode, it runs really faster, and it makes your life much more easier to run these tests in your like CI, like Jenkins or anything, because as you know, when you want to run it in Jenkins, you need to have your Selenium server or anything started behind the scenes, and you'll have to use things like XVF, XBVF, or whatever, and or you have to use your browser stack or Source Labs kind of a thing to run it remotely. But if you don't have enough budget and you just want to run it in headless mode, you just set it to false, and then it will run it. So this is your base URL. Let's say google.com, and then you can just in the test you can say set the path, or if you don't want, you can just remove the base URL, and you can specify directly in the thing as well. Okay, and another cool thing is it comes up with inbuilt reporting. So you can run the same text, you can say, okay, use plugin Allure. So there is something called Allure, which will give you, a beautiful report option. So let's run the same test in Allure. Let me enable the thing first. Okay. Okay, so we are rerunning the test again with Allure enabled. I didn't save it, I think. Okay, so the test has completed and the test failed in this particular step. And then you could see it has automatically taken a screenshot and put it into this output folder. And where exactly it failed, it will show you. And how we can see the report is, so after you run this thing, so there's this command allure serve output. So your output is defined in the configuration file. So it automatically knows where the output is. And then when you run it, it'll generate a report for you.
So the output it has saved, is it for test evidence?
Correct.
Okay. And did it mark anywhere saying that where it failed, or is it just a screenshot of the?
No, it just took the screenshot. Really. So basically, this is where it failed, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that, okay, it didn't go any further, and your log tells you what was the problem, right? So when you run the report, I think there's some problem with the report, that it's not actually using that one, but your report will look like this. So basically, the number of test cases and suits or environment that you have, and if you keep hold of all the outputs, then it will show you the trend as well, and graphs and timeline. It's a lot of really good features. All of these things you'll be able to maintain. Um, so let me quickly talk about the reporting part. So in the plugin section, you can see, this Allure that I was talking about. So your specific test, whatever it is, if it failed, how long it and took to run these tests, and where exactly it failed, which step it failed, and any screenshot that it has will tell you. And yeah, so the commands are here. Npm install Allure command line, that if you want to add that plugin, and how to run it is I've shown you previously. So you run it with the Allure command and then you serve it. Okay, so this is about the reporting part and the helpers, as I was talking about. So let's open this. It gives you a lot of options to run it with different options. So you could in your configuration file, you can decide to use WebDriver instead of Puppeteer, and you can set things like, okay, if you want to run it with Chrome or Firefox, you can say that, and the window size, and any timeouts, how long for do you wait for the page to load, and all these settings you can specify here. And similarly, any kind of authentication stuff, if you want to abstract the authentication rather than putting it into the test itself, you can mention these things in the configuration file, and you can kind of write a hook code to use it behind the scenes. So if you kind of create a login method and implement the login options within there, the user would not even see that as part of your test. So it's kind of taken care automatically. And if you want to run the same thing in a headless mode, you pass these options, and it'll run it easy for you. And you can do the same for Internet Explorer and all the other stuff. Personally, I am a big fan of Puppeteer because it is similar to Chrome, especially in your initial test phases. If you don't care about the browser specific feedback and you just want the test to run quickly, then you can use Puppeteer. All you need to do is just say use the helper to Puppeteer and set it to true or false. That's it. And what are the different methods that's supported by each of these um, web drivers is all listed in here, so you can use it. So it's possible that some some drivers will only support certain commands. So you will need to see if your particular use case is supported or not. But majority of your common stuff like fill field, drag and drop, and these things are pretty common to everything. There's only like handful of commands that are specific to certain web drivers, but it's very clearly explained what are the different parameters that you can pass for these things, and any kind of extensions that you can do on top. It's all clearly listed in the website. So I just talked about UI testing only so far, but it also supports API testing. If you want to mix and match your web and API, you can do the same. So concepts are very similar. Your REST endpoints, whatever it is, you mentioned that, and then you use your commands like I send get request, I send delete request, like that. And a couple of weeks ago we talked about GraphQL, which is similar to the REST API. So you can do it has support for GraphQL, API data factory, and a lot of these things that you can use. And locators, page objects, all of these things which you'll have to build by hand if you are using some other framework. These comes in very easily. They've explained how these things will work, and there is a lot of support on their website and their GitHub page to look at the examples. You take that and run it. So I'm going to quickly show you. I think we are running a bit out of time. So I'm going to quickly show you a bit more interesting example than the basic one. So for example, in this case, you can see I have my tests under. So the one I showed previously is a simple test. It's not your BDD kind of test. So this is your BDD example. Let's say you have an example called a website where you're logging in, so you can write your given when then, and then you have your different pages. So you can abstract a lot of these things, like you can create a login method, and you can add it in, and then similarly you can add your permissions and everything within the methods, and then you can start using it in your step definitions. So for your given step definition, you say, okay, admin.login, and all the implementation is behind the scenes. So the way you run it is similar to how I've shown you before. And you could use things like factories, like if you want to add, you might have heard of Faker. Let's say rather than, you might want to use different test data, like a name or email. So if you use Faker, it will automatically generate, test data for you. So you could use these options as well. So this is pretty much what I was planning to talk about the Codecept JS. I hope it gives you a bit of overview of what it can do. It depends in your individual circumstances whether your company is willing to go for this kind of a framework. But if you're JavaScript heavy in your company, then it is something you should definitely look at. And we've been using it for like more than a year, and we found it very useful, and it's working very well for us. So yeah.
So I believe this is open source, right?
Yes, it is absolutely open source, and there's a lot of support for it.
Satish, sorry, I'm a bit confused. So, if the application is developed in .NET Framework, then that cannot be tested using Codecept.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. So if it is a web application that you are testing, so your the code that your development team is using doesn't matter. So you can still run your UI tests with Codecept JS. But as I said, one of the key reasons for me and for my team to use Codecept JS is because all our developers are in JavaScript. So if we want more tests and if we want support from developers, we could use it. And the developers can also understand what the test is doing. So it's for me to have more communication with the developers that we have chosen this. But if it is not the case in your place, if you're using Java or .NET, you may not specifically find this benefit that I just talked about. But then as a tester, you can just use it for your UI testing. There's nothing stopping you.
Okay, thank you. Because my company is using services actually. They develop services. So, and I need to test this for API testing and REST-based services.
Yes. So as long as so even you can use it this for your API testing, as I mentioned earlier. There are helpers available for API testing. So as long as you have an endpoint, then you could use the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, guys?
Do you mind sharing this the code as well, Satish?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm recording the session, so I'll provide the recording as well as the code and the links. Yeah.
Satish, Hemant this side. So Satish, like we were talking about Report IO as well, that portal. Have you gone through that one or still it's pending?
Yeah, so I was actually planning for a 1 hour session. So I think
I thought we will combine both and
yeah. I think it took a bit longer than I expected. So I was actually planning to finish it in like 30 minutes, but it took longer. So what I'll do, I'll quickly go through the website and quickly run through, and I would let you guys to kind of go through the site, and maybe in future we can have a proper session for a report portal as well.
Okay, yeah, that
So
will be
before
great.
I go on to report portal, does anyone have any more questions on Codecept JS?
So even like I have used WebDriver like for all these kind of automation. And do we have any kind of like if I need to measure the performance as well, like how much time is it taking to load the page and just to navigate from one page to other page? I'm just talking about web UI. So do we have all those options here?
Um, I mean, we haven't particularly used Codecept.js for the performance reasons, but as I mentioned, like for each of your steps in the report, it shows you how long it took to process the steps. So, for example, this register took 3 seconds, right? So if you then drill down, it will tell you each of your steps, how long it took as well. Like for example, here I am on page, it took 5 seconds and these things. So this way you would kind of know how long it took to process.
Oh, okay, so we can have an idea. Then maybe we can go and write our own custom function to just report the timing. Maybe. Yeah,
Correct.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, guys? Okay, so I take it no. Then so we can quickly move on to the report portal.